Hello everyone. Welcome to Ajiro Tech. Ajiro Tech. In this video, you're going to be learning. Yes, this is for the ES students. I know your exam is around the corner and I'm doing everything I can. Literally, I'm just one person, right? And we're doing everything we can to ensure that you're good, and you're getting better. All right, so today we're looking at chapter 5 of um, the CIE ES, um, the year 12 students. And we're looking at e-security. And when we talk about e-security, we're talking about electronic security. The way we have physical security is the same way we need to have in the digital space also security. Because if you have a physical security, it simply means that there are things that can go into harm. And then you need to have something to guide it, right? To guide it. So we're looking at e-security, understanding digital security in the modern world. So we're looking at personal data. It's divided into three, actually. We have the personal data, and the personal data consists of what personal data is, examples of personal data, de-identification, pseudonymize um, data, keeping personal data confidential, and then we have security measures, keeping personal data secure, and then we have example your firewall and others. We have preventing misuse of personal data like farming, phishing, and all that. And then we have malware and threat. And then we look at the types of malware like virus, Trojan horse, and all of that. How malware is used, like fraud, and all that. Consequences for organizations and individuals, and then prevention of malware. And I think this is a good time to talk about the fact that if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, I don't know what you're doing really, because the YouTube channel is loaded. I mean, in this time and age, this is the one space that you need to have everything that you're looking for all in one place. For ICT, for IT, it's loaded, and across other subjects, right? And if you're a student who is challenged, you need private tuition on any subject, or even you have someone in IGCSE who's looking for private tuition, and they're struggling and they need a one-on-one session, we do that as well. I probably see the advert somewhere in the screen, right, about our private tuition across every subject. So you really don't want to miss out. Like I said, Agile Tech is a loaded source, and we are registered. Yes, registered right there. Registered right here in England, United Kingdom. So that gives you a boost because again, um, we have every majors. We've taken every majors. We are organization registered and licensed by the UK government. So it's all for you. It's all for you to explore. It's all for you to enjoy. We've gone through this measure so that you can enjoy it, you can take advantage of it, and you can learn, and you can become better, be a master of what in every subject, not just on IT or ICT, but in every subject. Okay, can we go on? Okay. So the first thing we look at is, what is personal data? What is personal data? Now, when we look at personal data, one useful definition of personal data is the one that is provided in the European Union website. And I have to quote it exactly the way it is because, again, I'm trying to avoid any form of plagiarism. It's not my definition, it's something I got from the website, and it helps us to be able to understand what personal data is. Now, in the website, it states that a personal data is any information that relates to what and to an identified or identifiable what living individual. You can see it right there in the slide. Now, this simply means that different pieces of information collected together can lead to identification of a particular person. It also simply means that data that has been manipulated to prevent identification still counts as personal data if it can be reconstituted. Please note that. Even de-identified, encrypted, or pseudonymized data is still classified as personal data. Anything that can relate to an identified or identifiable living individual. Take note, living individual is seen as personal data. So what does this mean? It means that any data that can be used to identify or recognize somebody is classed as personal data. Even when the data is manipulated so that it does not allow an individual to be identified. As long as it can be reconstituted, it is, a personal data. The EU went ahead to suggest that if they can reconstitute it, it can be seen as a personal data. So even if you have de-identified, encrypted, or pseudonymized, it can still be classified as a personal data. So anything that relates to an that is relating to an identified or identifiable living individual, as long as it can trace back to that person, it is seen as a personal data and should not be disclosed. Okay, so let's talk about the examples of personal data, right? Let's talk about the examples of personal data. The European Union, right? Just like I defined personal data as any information that can relate to an identifiable living individual, it is seen as a personal data, right? They have a set of rules governing the protection of data. In your IGCSE, you looked at DPA, Data Protection Act, that governs your data. Now, we call them the General Data Protection Regulation. But let's talk about the examples that these examples were outlined by the EU. The reason why I don't use the word EU is because so that I want you to know what EU means. EU means European Union. So it is filled with countries in Europe coming together to form this body. So what are those examples of personal data? We have name, right? And that constitutes your name, your first name or your forename, and then you have your surname or your last name. We have address, your home address is seen as a personal data. We have an email address, right? In the email address, it can be used to identify you, right? For example, now I have info, that's general, that's our email that you can send any information to. But there's some names that have, for example, right? I do have my own as Ajiro ND, right? At ajirotech.com, right? That is, with that, my name. Some could be first name dot surname at the organization, the domain name dot whatever, right? And then the next one is an identification card number. Identification card number can also be traced back to the person, right? We have location, right? Data for mobile phones. So be careful about it because they can use that to also trace you. An IP address. An IP address is also seen as a personal data. Why? Because it identifies you in the network where you're using at that moment. So that's a personal data. And then we have cookie IDs. Cookie IDs are those informations you accept on the internet, and they store your preferences, the things you do on that particular website. And that can also be used to identify you. And then we have advertising identifier of your phone, right? That can also be used. And then we have hospital, right? So data held by a hospital or even a doctor, right? That can uniquely identify a person is seen as a personal data. Does this make sense? Okay. So let's talk about de-identification. Now, when we talk about de-identification, is usually a kind of a common strategy where you're trying to prevent a person from identifying, you're trying to prevent a person's identity from being revealed. So you remove personal data, personal items of data from certain records so they cannot be identified. Items like names are being removed, right? So that's one way to de-identify a person. But if the person could still be recognized from the remaining data, it will be possible to re-identify the data and add the removed data. Now, let's look at, for example, let me get this pointer. Now, let's look at this, right? If you look at this, this is the name of the person. Now, the name, address, and phone probably has been removed, and then you have it as ID and then your address. If I know where the person stays, and I look at the ID, I know the exact address, I can point it to the person. I can be able to reconstruct that record. Now, that becomes a personal data. We talked about encryption. Encryption has been covered in chapter 1. I think we have a video of that in chapter 1. Go look it up, right? And the whole idea of encryption is to ensure that the data becomes, the data that's scrambled, it becomes meaningless to anyone who intercepts it, right? So it makes the data unidentifiable to prevent unauthorized access, no doubt. But when the data is scrambled and becomes unreadable, take note, data can also be decrypted and become personal data again. So if the person has a decryption key, what is going to happen? The person can still identify the person. Are we together? Can still identify the person. So encryption is good, but if they have access to the decryption key, they can still identify the person. Pseudonymization. What does it mean? It is when instead of removing personal item of data, they are replaced with a temporary ID. Okay, so this means that instead of seeing the person's name, you will see an ID which means nothing to you. Okay, now I know you're wondering, why is it the same? Is it the same thing? No, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing because here, like I said, this is an ID that has been given. Now, the items, certain items in their identifications are removed, okay, from that record so that the person cannot be identified, right? Now, if the person could still be identified from the remaining data, it would be possible to re-identify the person and add the removed data. That is for de-identification. And I explained the fact that if this is the person information, we could remove this and replace it with something like maybe an ID and address. It is different from pseudonymization because in pseudonymize, we are replacing the name with an ID. For a good example, employee ID, right? Employee 1, employee 2, employee 3. It means nothing to the person. It doesn't relate to the person. So the ID can be replaced with the real name, right? If the person is John Smith, right? And then employee ID, we can have employee ID 456. That becomes the personal identity in the organization. Are we together? Right? So you will see an ID which means nothing to you. The problem is it is similar. Don't get me wrong. It is similar to, like I said, it's similar, but it's not the same thing. To the identification, somebody can recognize that individual from the rest of the record. So you have the name removed, or in this case, replaced with a temporary ID. While for de-identification, you have it removed. Certain items of the person's data removed and leaving the rest. So if the person, and then you can probably replace it to its ID or if you want to. But if the person is able to put pieces together, they can still identify the person in the identification. But in pseudonymization, we're now replacing it with what? With ID. Right? So if they can recognize the individual from the rest of the record, because you're only replacing the name with ID, the rest records like address and everything is still there. So if the person is able to recognize all this information from the address and everything, they can still identify that. Okay? So I talked about the fact that when it comes to what the EU did, right, is that they had this set of rules governing the protection of data, right? And they are called the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. Now, what is it all about? Right here on your screen, they promote both pseudonymization and anonymization of personal data to ensure that this data is either redacted or anonymous. Organizations with personal data should use one or other of these methods to reduce the risk of ensuring that people are not being identified. You know, all this Secret Service and all these Interpol and everything, these are the methods that they use to ensure that their information is not being revealed. It reduces the risk. Like I said, even de-identification data is still classified as personal data under EU regulations. So please, let's take note of that. Okay. So we'll talk about anonymization. What are we simply saying? We're simply saying that permanently alter data to make it impossible to identify an individual. So the record is anonymous. You have no idea who it is. And in pseudonymization, we replace those identifiable data with a temporary what? ID. That ID means identifier, if you're wondering what it is. Right? So again, data security, organizations must implement technical measures and protection measures in place in terms of privacy by design, protection measure in place from inception. When we talk about keeping personal data confidential, computers are used by organizations and companies to store large amount of personal information. The question might arise, why do we need to keep data confidential? This is a very important question. Why do we need to keep data confidential? The answer is, if it were to fall under the wrong hands, the data could be used for identity theft. Now, if it's organizations, they could even withdraw large amount of money, or even individuals from their bank account. So, identity theft. What's identity theft? Is when you're pretending to be another person online by using their personal information to commit fraud or other crime. We talked about financial fraud. That's just what we talk about, right? Where they use it to make and withdraw large amount of money, making purchases. That's why we need to keep personal data confidential, because it can be misused in various ways. The next one is privacy invasion. If burglar obtain personal data such as your address and information about a person, about when a person is at work, they can burgle that person's house. Therefore, people should not post information about their holidays or vacation plans on social media. It's funny why you're traveling and you're letting the whole world know you're traveling. Yeah, it's good to be on vacation. It's good. Let people know if you want, if you have a large fan base, want to know. But again, keep your personal life very, very controlled, because there are people who can use those information against you. Especially if you're the kind of person that travels a lot and everything, they can invade your home when you're not around. Because you know that obviously this person is on vacation. You let them know when you are leaving your house. You do a film of your house. You do a film of when you're leaving the house. You leave a film when you're going to the airport. And the criminals are they're right there. They're watching. They're keeping record. And you think you have a lot of viewers watching you. Okay, I'm kidding, but it happens, right? But please, let's be careful. That is what I'm saying. Let us be careful. In terms of employees and insurance, employers and insurance companies can use social media information to make decisions about employment and coverage. So you have to be careful, because there's something called background checks. They run a lot of background checks, right? So they carry out these background checks to know a person. And what are the ways do you think they're going to use it? Yeah, they're going to use online presence. Does this person have an online presence? What do they do? Especially as ladies, you have to be careful. If you're looking for a big time gig, a big time job, they run background checks on you. And when they go to your TikTok and your YouTube shorts and your Instagram reel, I'm not saying anything. What do they see when they do a check? Hmm, 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 hmm. Okay. Yeah. I know you're looking at yourself. Yeah. Look twice. I'm asking you to look twice because these things you do have a way of coming back around. So be careful. That is what I'm simply saying. Okay? Because they can use that to carry out checks.
A lot, and you're like, okay, do you have a private tuition? Don't you have? Do you have? And yes, Agile Tech do have a private tuition. So by my right, you can see that we have for the EdExcel and Cambridge IGCSE, and yes, we do have for all subjects. Okay, all subjects. Okay, the popular ones that's always been in demand is mathematics, English language as a second language. Okay, we have physics, we have biology, we have chemistry, and we have um, the flagship, which is ICT, just here and there. We also have business studies. So if you're interested for a private tuition, I think all you have to do is send an email to the sales team at agiletech@gmail.com, and they would reply to you, talk about your time zone, talk about, and the fee is really quite affordable. Really, it's really quite affordable. It's when you look at it across other tutoring service, I think this is the one that's quite affordable, and you get the very best of service. We also have for the E levels as well, and also for the EdExcel. So we have for the Cambridge E levels and EdExcel E levels. Okay, and we have also across the subject mathematics, which is usually the hot cake when it comes to E level, mathematics and chemistry, and then biology. These are usually one of the ones we have in demand always, all the time. Even physics, for E level. So all you have to do, if you're watching this right now and you are interested for a private tuition, then you can do yourself a solid, okay, and send an email to the sales team at agile@gmail.com, and they'll reply to you.
There's something I want to explain called the duty of confidence. It is important that workers maintain the confidentiality of personal data. Organizations can encourage workers to be aware of their responsibilities. Workers who deal with confidential information about other individuals have what we call a duty of confidence. They are hospitals, they are top agencies, and they have what we call duty of confidence. Their database, social media, big time social media companies, they have what we call duty of confidence because it simply means that they have access, you see, to our personal data, and we have to be careful. We have to be careful. So they have to be careful to ensure that every employee working in the organization does not leak those informations or give it to third parties. So, duty of confidence, the workers must not disclose information except with permission. There are legal injunctions which can prevent this disclosure. So, both to the individual and to the employers, they must not tell anybody or use the information for any reason except with the permission of the person who gave it. Should they attempt to do so, the person whose data has been leaked can carry out legal injunction. Does that make sense? Okay. Encryption is one way. The IT department, to ensure that these data are confidential, they ensure that it makes these data unidentifiable should their server be hacked. And if those data are decrypted, it becomes personal data again. Authorization. Only authorized personnel should be able to access data. It minimizes the information sharing between organizations, and anonymization protects against identification. See, organizations must be held responsible for their decision to pass on information. Good practice is to make sure that only the least amount of information that could identify an individual is passed on. And I know I'm saying this because we have online services, online shopping, online banking. These people have access to our personal data. And if there is no governing body ensuring or monitoring, we could be in trouble. Our data could be sold to the highest bidder, and we have to be careful. So it allows organizations to have access to private data, such as our name, address, phone number, financial records, and so on. This information should not be passed from organization to organization without authorization from that individual. Another action a company could take is to anonymize this information like we've talked about. So that simply means that the person is anonymous. You're not mentioning the person by name. Right? However, every other information could still be identified. We talked about the background checks, and we talked about the fact that individual also has the responsibility. It's not only the organization that has the responsibility. Individual also has the responsibility of ensuring their data are kept safe. Not everything should go to the social. Not everything should be on social media, because employers, they do their background check, right? And they go to your social media profiles. And personal information might persuade a prospective employer not to employ an individual, right? Because of what is being posted. Even insurance company in many countries around the world use the same approach and might charge much higher. We call it a premium subscription, depending on the customer's lifestyle, right? And in any form of addition mean use this as evidence when deciding not to pay out a claim. Because if the person's lifestyle is everywhere, insurance company is going to charge higher because it's much of a risk because this person is everywhere. And that is a lot of work. Even your, okay, so this is very important. I've talked about the background checks, right? Which is your social media privacy. So you have that responsibility to ensure that that is done. So be selective about the personal information you share. Not everything has to be online. As students, not everything has to be online. We talked about it extensively in IGCSE. Go look at the video. Go watch it. Just to bring back your memory on it. Even review your privacy settings regularly because employers carry out background checks using one of the tools they use is your social media profiles. Another thing I want to talk about is your metadata and your geotag. What do I mean by this? Photos and videos people take with their smartphone contain information known as metadata, including the time and place where it was taken. Now that is seen as a geotag. If these photos were intercepted, the individual address or where they work could be discovered. Okay, so however, smartphones do have software which can be used to either delete the geotag from image or disable them where so that they are not being tagged. Right? So we have the smartphone security, ensuring that your devices are up to date and you enable automatic update because when your devices are not up to date for a long period of time, it can be susceptible to being intercepted. So you have to look out for it. Okay, you have to look out for it. How do we keep our personal data secured? So there are numbers of different precautions that can be taken in order to keep personal data secured. One of them is firewall. A firewall is designed to prevent unauthorized network access. Okay, so we have certain a lot of organizations that store personal data, and they tend to have several computers that form networks, many of which are connected to the internet. So without a firewall, these computers can access unauthorized users to the internet. So firewall filters data, examines data, and these data are the incoming data. And then it also blocks traffic based on the security rules that you have placed on them. Does that make sense? Based on the security rules that you have placed on them. So it examines that data packet and breaks them down to fiable IP address and other information. So this is how it works. So if an IP address that is not allowed, the firewall can block that traffic. It prevents certain computers from gaining access to the network. So it prevents hackers from accessing the network. Although they can be bypassed by physical theft. What do I mean physical theft? They can come into the organization and clone the computer or plug their drive into the computer. That's physical theft. Steal the computer or whatever they want to do, or IP address changes. Okay, or IP address changes. So they can change the IP address to make it look as if, to make it to be the one that is acceptable by the firewall. So take note of that. So you can see here that this is a firewall that filters the incoming data from the internet to these devices. So not every data is accepted because they have what? A security rule. Okay. We have what we call penetration testing. Pen test. What is penetration testing? Now, this is where a company employs somebody to deliberately attack their computer network to identify security weaknesses. It was something Facebook was doing at a time, what you know as Meta. So they employ, we call it ethical hacking, right? They employed people to hack into their system. They paid a huge amount of money. Now, what they were doing is to expose vulnerability. So the more exposed they are, they look at it and they work on it. They look at it, they work on it. They were doing that. I think it was 3 times a month, or 3 times in a year, or twice in a year. They do that. They host it as a challenge or event. The person who could hack the system gets so amount of millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people were up for it. And if you could do it, you could expose their vulnerability. They look at it, well, how do you do it? And then they fix it. 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 So that is what companies do, right? So they do this so that the authorized hackers will identify weakness in their system, and then they will take measures to improve it if necessary. Now, as a big organization, this is something that is largely advised to do, so that you can, especially if you're a financial firm or any kind of firm that holds hundreds to millions of personal data, so that these informations can be kept secured. Right? So it's basically a way to find out how easy to access a computer network and how well measures can be taken to protect the data, that they have, and improve their system. So the purpose of doing this is to enable the company to secure the personal data from any form of illegal hackers who would attempt to gain unauthorized access to the system. So in summary, they identify system vulnerabilities, they test the security measures, they improve security if necessary. So we have what we call the resonance, exploitations, and then reporting. Okay, so if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section so that we can look at it, and then we can provide answers to whatever questions you have. So what are those authentication techniques? How do we authenticate people? Now, what is authentication? It is the process of verifying that a user is who they claim to be. That's what authentication is. And it can be done through one or more authentication technique. Now, when it's more than one, we see it as two-factor authentication. 2FA. That's what that 2FA, that's what it means. Two-factor authentication. Okay? So it's a way of to identify themselves. That is why most time you are required to log on into the system so that you can be identified to have access. Okay? And so that it can be sure it is not a hacker trying to gain access. And this is why we call it authentication. So the first one is proving who you are. The first one is your true username and password. True username and password. Okay, that's what we have it. True username and password. So so you can type in an ID and a password which is only known to the user. The next one, it could be inserting or swiping a smart card, which belongs to what? The user. Okay. And then you could use biometrics, right? And of course, users use biometric data, which relates to what? A unique physical characteristics. So those data are uniquely known. In fact, those that data is part of you, so it's unique, right? No two people can have the same biometrics. Okay, so it is a unique physical characteristics of the user. Now, when it comes to biometrics, right, it can involve the use of your iris or fingerprint scanning, right, as they can be both felt to be the best at providing what? Unique what? Data. Of course, they are quite expensive, right? So you need to know that. And again, one of the downside is the fact that it can be affected by grace or death. So for fingerprints, that can also be a problem. So the 2FA, multi-factor authenticator, right? We looked at the fact that it requires users to provide two or more different type of verification before gaining access to a system or account. So if you look at your social media, right, your WhatsApp, your Discord, you probably notice that these are various factors. So that if you want to gain access, they need more than one authentication to prove it that this is who you are, right? So something you know becomes your username and password, your PIN. Something you have is your card or your mobile phone. Something that is unique to you or something you are is your biometric, which is your fingerprint, your iris, even your facial recognition. So you could go to the bank or to the ATM to make withdrawals. Now, take note, in the ATM withdrawals, you are requiring two things: something you know and something you have. What is that something you have? Your ATM card. What is that something you know? Your PIN. So when you put your card is not enough to gain you access. You need to have more than one to be able to clear you, which is now your PIN. For online banking, it uses multiple factors, including the password, security questions, or even sometimes one-time token. Okay. So the two-factor authentications, many banks send one-time PIN by text message as a second factor. So let's take note of that. Why does it matter? That's a good question. It matters because even if hackers obtain one factor, like your password, they still cannot access your account without the additional factors. This is something I did not like. I knew it, but I was not implementing it. And it cost me dearly. I think it was my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn account was hacked. And you're wondering, an ICT teacher, an IT teacher, your account is getting hacked. Number one, I wasn't taking LinkedIn account seriously. I still don't take it seriously as of the time of this recording, right? And it was hacked when I eventually went to log in, because it was just a straightforward process of passwords, your username and passwords. But now I have taken measures to ensure that there are more than one ways. And I've gotten so many emails of people trying to bypass. And they send me, okay, this email is sent to you. If you're not the one, please disregard. I'm like, what are they trying to do? Because hackers will always try to see how many accounts they can have access to. Levels of access. If hackers do gain access to a network, their ability to retrieve personal data can be limited by network settings created by the network manager. So levels of access is very important for organizations. So the network settings can limit ability to retrieve personal data by granting different levels of access to different user group. So we should have levels of customer. The customer should not be able to access the bank's account, right? Shouldn't be able to access the bank account or everybody's account. Should only be able to access only your own account. So if your account is hacked on you, right? Nobody goes down with you. Okay. And then we have the admin staff. And we have the doctor. We have the administrator. So in this case, the slide was tailored towards hospital. Now, so customer, people in the organization, the patients, right, should have access to their own biodata, their hospital records, and all that. Only their own hospital records. The admin staffs should be granted access to non-health related patient information, right? Rather, who this patient needs to see, are this patient seeing this, are this patient seeing this, but they don't have access to anything health related patient information. They don't have access to it. Only the doctor has access to such patient diagnosis and medical record. Not just one doctor, every other doctor has access to it. As long as you're a doctor, you have access to that record. Then we have administrator, which is the owner of the hospital or the CEO, the one in charge, has full access to everything. So these are various levels of access to limit the kind of data you can have access to. Does that make sense? Let me give you another example. Online shopping, right? Requires a login. So only the customer will only see data that is relevant to them. However, if a programmer employed by the company access customer database, they will be able to view all the customer's account. Those are various levels of access. This is because they have been given a higher level of access than the customer. Now let's take it down to, we've talked about hospital, we've talked about online shopping, let's talk about social networking sites. Now in social networking sites, we have level of access. Now the owner of that data can grant different levels of access. Now when the person posts information, who gets to access what? Right? So it is possible for the individual to amend settings so that only friends are allowed to see their data, or they could allow both friends and friends of friends to see their data. Or on the other hand, if the setting is made public, it means that particular data can be seen by everyone. So allocating different access level to different group limits the information that the different group can use and the action they are allowed to take. Very, very important. Okay. Network policy. What are network policies? It is important to know that network policy number one, there are a set of rules. When we talk about set of rules, it simply means that allow company to choose who access their network and control usage. Right? So there are a set of rules that allow company to choose who accesses what? Their computer network and control their use of computer once they gain access. So many companies now use internet to carry out their business transaction. And as a consequence, their computer networks have become vulnerable to attack. This attack can allow competitors to gain knowledge of their operations. So They result in data being destroyed or provide access to any personal data is stored. So when workers join a company, right? This is very important for employers. When workers join a company, they're normally required to sign an agreement. And that agreement is an acceptable use policy, including a network policy. It specifies what type of use is acceptable. So they sign an agreement specifying what and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And they have to agree not to use the network. You can't be at work in the bank and you're social and you're on Facebook, except you are the marketer. You're on TikTok, except you're in the marketing department and of course using it to carry out some marketing. So all these things are very, very important. You can't be using the network for that. So all these agreements that the employee is signing is limiting them or is preventing them for illegal, unethical, or distracting non-work related what activities. Very important. They have to agree not to use it. Why not necessarily preventing hackers from outside the organization attacking the network? It does help to limit what employees might be tempted to do with personal data. So they have to sign all this. If the hospital, the doctor has to sign levels of access. These records, you do not use it to do this because they have access to so many personal patient records. And you have to be careful. Okay. The next one is software update. Now, software updates are important because those updates eliminate security weakness the hackers could exploit. And this is why you see major softwares like Facebook, Instagram, Discord, YouTube, and all that. They're always making updates. And it's advisable for users to always update, even banking softwares, to also update them as well. Because when you don't update it and you keep it for a long time, it is vulnerable to attack. So those updates has to be timely to limit vulnerable attacks. And of course, the operating system antivirus need regular updating. So you need to update them. And that's why for mobile operating system, the mobile operating system updates are always, not all the time, but when your updates are coming in, you have, because what happens essentially is that when there's a new update and you're using an out or you're using a very, very old, like for the Windows now, they've discontinued Windows 10. So that simply means that if you're still, or people still using Windows 7, I mean, you can be susceptible to so many kinds of attack if you're still using Windows 7 because those have been discontinued a long time ago. Windows 8, Windows 8.1, they have been discontinued a long, long time ago. Windows 10, I've used a lot of Windows operating system. I think I started with SP. I started with SP. Yeah, I think with SP Professional and all that, SP, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10, different kinds of 10, and then Windows 11. For the Mac OS, I think I used 15, Mac OS 15, Mac OS 18, and then the Mac OS 26. I just jumped directly to 26. So if you're referring to some of my MacBook tutorials, you probably see it. So these things are very, very important. Okay. So certain types of application software would also need regular updating. So what are those other measures? Other measures are, let's talk about your devices. Now, what happens if your device is stolen? Okay. If a device is lost or stolen, the owner can send a command to it using another phone that will completely remove any data, such as personal data, from it. Any of this individual data that is not backed up to the cloud will be lost forever. But it does mean that the person who has stolen the phone will be unable to see any of the owner's what? Personal data. In order to receive the command to erase all the data, the device has to be turned on and connect to the internet. If the device is lost in the airport, what happens? The task of wiping the data may be straightforward. However, whoever has stolen the phone wants to might want to stop the data from being removed from a device, so they have to what? Turn it off, remove the SIM card, and then switch it back on again. And when they do that, what happens? They have access to your personal data stored on your phone. If it's just nearby, you can use a command to make it ring aloud. Now, what am I talking about? Now, finding, there's what we call finding. So that phone finding ensures that it's able to, you can do a lot of things. You can wipe your phone, you can make the phone to ring, and all that and all that. So this is very important. So additional security protocols to protect data beyond remote deletion. You can encrypt, encryption for data protection, two-factor authentication for sensitive accounts, and regular security update for the operating system. Okay. So this is very important, right? Now, preventing misuse of personal data. Before considering how to prevent the misuse of personal data, it is important to consider how personal data can be gathered by people who are not supposed to have access to it. Many students think that hacking into a computer in order to copy, delete, or change data is very easy. It's not easy. To hack is not easy. Okay. It's not just open your computer and then you hack. No. It's not, it doesn't work like that. Okay. With all the security measures outlined above, it is very difficult. However, there are other ways in which personal data of individuals can be gathered by unauthorized persons. The most common methods are the ones we want to talk about. The first one is farming. What's farming? Now, it's important for you to know that computers connected to the internet all have a file called there's a file called the host file that stores all websites addresses. This is like a basic text file. It's like a basic text file which contains name and IP address of a numbers of URL. So when the user types the URL into a web browser, the computer will first look into the host file to find the URL. It then looks up the corresponding IP address and seeks to connect to the computer with the IP address. If it cannot find the URL in the host file, it will go to the DNS. So this is what is happening here that I'm explaining. It goes to the DNS and looks for it there and uses the IP address to access the appropriate computer. Now, where farming comes in, so you can understand how this works. When farming comes in is, it begins with the user downloading a malicious software without realizing they have done so. Now, when they download the software and they run it, what it does is that this software would corrupt the host file by adding URL of banks, right? For example, to the host file and the corresponding IP address, they would take the user. Once it has now corrupt that host file, it will now take the user to fake websites that look legitimate. So, you will download it without your knowledge, it will corrupt the host file, the DNS server is hacked and corrupted, and then every time you'll be redirected to a fake website. So it's when they first start corrupt the host file or DNS to redirect that users to what? To fake website without their knowledge. And with the support of what? Entering their personal or banking details. Okay? So in both cases, user will not realize they have been tricked since they would type in the correct URL. So you type in the correct URL and it redirects you. So if you're not sensitive, if you don't know the platform, then you'll probably be in trouble, right? So there are numbers of ways users can limit these changes of farming. There are numbers of ways. Number one, the site is not secure. Those are warning signs, right? The site is not secure. Another way is up to date. Those are ways to prevent it. The warning sign, the site is not secure. So no warning even with HTTPS. Those are warning signs. Okay. Fake website looks legitimate. You see that is you're going to Shopify and it looks like Shopify. You're going to Amazon and it looks like Amazon. You have to be careful. You have to look at it critically. So prevention measures is up-to-date antiviruses, of course, up-to-date browsers, softwares. Let it be the latest one. It can alert you that a fake website has been loaded. It's even advisable to use a trusted ISP, internet service provider. Also use digital certificates can be checked to make sure that the site is legitimate. Any site that requires the entry of personal data should begin with HTTPS. That means Hypertext Transfer Protocol secured. So if it does not, it might well be, if it does not have the HTTPS, it might well be a fake website. Particularly if it does not have a colored padlock icon next to it. It may be useful to check the URL if it's correct for the website. The actual fake website may have a telltale sign such as poor grammar, spelling mistakes, we should alert the user that this is a fake website. Does that make sense? Okay. Phishing is when a fraudster obtains personal banking details, such as username, passwords, credit cards, or debit card details using email. So they send legitimate looking email. They pretend to be a bank from a bank official. It incorporates links that direct you to fake websites, and it creates the urgency or excitement. Your account has been locked or something. Please click on this link to sort it out now. You don't, bank should not have to send me an email to tell me that my account is locked. Yes, they can send me an email to inform me that my account is locked, but it shouldn't include a link. It shouldn't include a link because there are ways I can go to get it sorted. Okay, so this is an example of a phishing email. It looks something like this from the bank to the user. Urgent, account access required. Your account will be closed unless you verify your details. And they tell you to put in your login details on a website that you are not even sure. Put in your login details. That's one. And they tell you to put in your card, your PIN. Why would the bank tell me to do that when they have it? Then you know that is that is phishing. Okay. So they pretend to be an official of the bank. They leave a message which often directs users to enter personal information into the fake website that looks legitimate but is fake. Okay, it often entails you to disclose your information, which can lead to identity theft. Okay, so the type of phishing attack is maybe you have, or it could be in this form that they tell you that you have won a prize. Click on the link to claim it, or account closure notice, or direct request for information. So how do you identify them? So for those, for the winnings, before we go to how to identify them, for the winnings, they might tell you to send it, they'll tell you to send a fee, a transport fee, or um, to send money to cover the fee, the sender's fee, or uh, and when you send the money, you might not hear from them again, or they tell you to send more. If I've won something and I have to send you money to claim it, then I've not won anything. Are you hearing me? If you have won something and you have to send the money to claim it, then you have not won anything. They can deduct the money from there. I don't mind. Yeah, true. I don't mind. Deduct it. Right? Deduct it and then do it. Okay. So take note. So you can see an address here. Now this looks like Amazon, but it's not. Because if you look at the URL here, now we call it what there's is a spoofed URL, right? An individual will type in the email address and password, allowing the fraudster to gain access to the account. The URL is called a spoofed URL, as the attacker has been given the site a name which deliberately spelt in a way that is close to the name of the authentic website. So if you look at it, you might probably not notice, but again, that's why you need to learn how to spell, right? Okay, so if you don't know how to spell Amazon, right? It's .co.uk, by the way. It's .co.uk. So .com is, I think I bought the license for .com as well. They bought every license, right? So if you don't know what it is, then Facebook.com. Facebook is 1K and you see 2K and like still the same thing. It's not. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So please let's take note. So there are several things to do. So check the spelling mistakes. Users should never trust emails that come from people whose name you do not recognize. If it looks suspicious, what do? You block it and delete it. Because reputable organizations will never ask you to what? Will never ask you for your personal information because they have it. So it's a sign that it's phishing. If a message begins with dear, doesn't include your name, that's phishing. Dear customer, I'm not customer, I have a name. Personal and financial information should never be sent in an email. If it contains an information that you have won something very large, right? You just know that it's probably fake. Link placed within the email that are shorter than normal. If you hover on the short link or the bit link, you will see the actual link. Check if it's actually authentic. Don't just click on it because it's from Apple. Are you sure it's from Apple? Check. Check. Don't be too busy.
A lot, and you're like, okay, do you have a private tuition? Don't you have? Do you have? And yes, Agile Tech do have a private tuition. So by my right, you can see that we have for the EdExcel and Cambridge IGCSE, and yes, we do have for all subjects. Okay, all subjects. Okay, the popular ones that's always been in demand is mathematics, English language as a second language. Okay, we have physics, we have biology, we have chemistry, and we have the flagship, which is ICT, just here and there. We also have business studies. So if you're interested for a private tuition, I think all you have to do is send an email to the sales team at agiletech@gmail.com, and they would reply to you, talk about your time zone, talk about and the fee is really quite affordable. Really, it's really quite affordable. It's when you look at it across other tutoring service, I think this is the one that's quite affordable and you get the very best of service. We also have for the E levels as well. and also for the edXL. So we have for the Cambridge E levels and edXL E levels. Okay, and we have also across the subject mathematics, which is usually the hot cake when it comes to E level mathematics and chemistry, and then biology. These are usually one of the ones we have in demand always, all the time, even physics, for E level. So all you have to do, if you're watching this right now and you are interested for a private tuition, then you can do yourself a solid, okay, and send an email to the sales team at ajiro@gmail.com and they'll reply to you.
Smishing is another variation of phishing. The major difference is that when it comes to phishing, it uses what we call the SMS, right? Text messages are being sent because we're not in the era of smartphones. We're not in the era of smartphones. Text message is being sent, okay? And this message that is being sent contain links, phone numbers, and this smishing has increased over the years because of the increase of smartphone adoption. Everybody has a smartphone. Not everybody is on their laptop. Everybody's on their smartphone. So it's easy to activate a link within a text message. Just as with phishing, the main intention is to what? Is to get their personal information. Is to get their personal information. Okay? So they use text message to get their smishing request. They might get you to download an attachment which contain malware, which in turn feeds personal data back to them. It can include a link, like I talked about, even a phone number asking you to call to claim your price. Please be very careful. Okay? So you should look for all the signs as with phishing: grammatical error, spelling errors, messages requiring immediate action or offering financial reward, sign up now, or other pushy and too good to be true offers. You should never reply to such messages. Good practice is always to open the sender's website itself. I don't open link just because they click. I will go to your main site. I will search it myself, make my research myself, right? So it's important to always do that. If they are pretending to be a bank, there are times where the bank has called me to verify some information or maybe on some subscriptions I did. What did I do? I said, how do I know you're from the bank? And then I said, no problem. Please hold. I had to call somebody. I said, okay, I'll call you back. Okay, call me back. I want to verify. And I will call the bank to say, okay, what's your name? The person mentions his name. I call the bank to verify, okay, this is from the bank. And then the person calls back. So you have to verify that they are calling you, that the person is calling, representing itself as an as a worker in the bank doesn't mean you start giving them their information. Verify. How sure are you this person is from the bank? Number two, you do not disclose personal information to them. If they are from the bank, they have my information. Why do I have to tell you or give you my PIN or give you very sensitive data? I cannot do that. You have my information. Least I can do is probably give you my first name. And you have every other information. The next one is vision. And vision means what? Is a combination of voice and phishing. So it makes it a voice call, phone calls, right? The caller pretends to be from a bank, claims of account issues or prize winning, that your account is blocked and they want to help you to rectify it. Please call your username, your password, and this and that and all that. Why will I do that? In the name of Allah, why will I do that? Why? I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. You're from the bank. You have my details. I'm not going to do that. Or we sent an OTP. Can you call it for me? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not. Fraudsters may use pre-recorded messages. So they might even call your bank, record it, say it looks as if they're from your bank. Don't do that. Confirm from your bank. It only takes you a second to confirm, but takes you a lifetime of regret. Only a second to confirm. So we've talked about phishing, smishing, that people are more vulnerable on phones. So why smishing includes SMS text messages, links in text, phone numbers in text. Phishing is a phone call or an interactive voice prompt. A voice prompt is a voicemail is left and then telling you to call this number, that you have won something or there's an issue with your account, and you have to be very careful. Okay. So these are all physical methods, but smartphones have softwares included that can perform the blocking of numbers. There are also variations of apps available which go beyond merely blocking the calls and keeps a file containing the block numbers for all phone owners. Using the app, users can browse through the files to see which numbers are blocked. One software solution is employed by large organizations whereby the software can filter numbers according to the likelihood that scams are being attempted. So it's important to always evaluate prevention methods that we have described here so they can help you as much as possible. Now we move to a summary of the things we've talked about. For farming, up to date antiviruses, latest softwares update, digital certificate, very important. And then ensure the sites that you are being redirected to begins with what? Hypertext transfer protocol secure. Phishing, look for grammar mistakes. Delete suspicious emails. Hover on links to check the URL. Don't trust unfamiliar senders. For smishing, use mobile protection softwares. Verify the sender's phone number. Very important. Don't reply to messages. Avoid clicking links in text. For phishing, call numbers. Call bank on another phone to verify. Right? Hang up and block numbers if you suspect otherwise. Don't give login info over phone. Why would you do that? Don't do it. Use smartphone blocking apps. Never, take note, share personal information by email, by text, or phone number unless you initiated the contact. Take note. Okay. Malware. That is short. It means malicious software. There's a short for malicious software. So it's a general term for computer programs which have been created with the deliberation intention of causing damage or disruption or gaining unauthorized access to a computer system. All right? So that is what malware does. They have that deliberate intention of causing damage or disruption or gaining access to a computer without owner's permission. Now, if you notice the key characteristics, the intent, deliberate design, they are designed deliberately to cause harm. The sole purpose is to gain unauthorized entry to system. And what's the consequence? To cause damage, disrupt, or gain control. And we have a host number of them. We have viruses, Trojan horse, worms, spyware, adware, malicious bots, rootkits, ransomware, and so on. What are computer viruses? Computer viruses or a computer virus is a type of malware designed to spread from one computer to another, causing changes in operation, as it spreads. That's what it does. Causes changes in operation as it spreads. So they have the ability to self-replicate, just like a real virus. Some type of virus delete the data on the disk or even corrupt. Most of the time, they insert themselves or attach themselves to another program. They often lie dormant, waiting to be triggered or activated before they can cause damage. And once they're activated, what do? They can delete data, they can modify data, they can even slow down the processing speed or even cause the computer to crash. Okay, so what are those common systems I will talk about? Unauthorized email, system crashes, homepage changes, password changes, frequent pop-ups. So you have to look out for it. Okay, they spread. Trojan horse. What's a Trojan horse? A Trojan horse or a Trojan is a malicious computer program which is used to hack into a computer. It enables the person who created it to take control of the computer it has affected. It's funny though, because the name Trojan refers to an ancient Greek. I'm going to tell you a story about it. An ancient Greek is a very interesting story. So these Greek soldiers were trying to penetrate the city of Troy, but they couldn't do it because of the wall was so thick. So what they did was that they hid inside a wooden horse and deceived the Trojans, right? The city was Trojan, right? That's the city is Troja, and then the Trojans, to deceive the Trojans into thinking it was a peace offering from the Greek. So when the Trojan took the horse inside the city walls, the Greek soldiers led themselves out and attacked. So it's the same thing that the Trojan malware is doing, is to deceive the user into thinking they have downloaded a genuine software. Unlike computer viruses and one, Trojan generally do not attempt to infect other files or replicate themselves. Instead, they are used for numbers of purposes. Number one, to gain access to someone's computer so they can control the system, gain personal data. Another purpose is to delete files from a particular hard drive that they don't want, or to even corrupt the data or to corrupt the system. That is what the Trojan does, right? So they don't infect, they don't replicate, they don't do all that. Are we together? Worm is similar to viruses in that they can replicate themselves. Now, what a virus does is to exploit security holes in a network to spread throughout the network. Their main purpose is to replicate themselves again and again and again so they can occupy more and more hard disks until the disk is full and can no longer function. They don't attach themselves because they self-replicate to any other program. They are standalone programs, so they are designed to spread many copies to other computers in the network. This results in slowing down the traffic in the network. Some worms do not try to change the computer. They are moving, but they are designed to occupy more and more bandwidth in order to slow the network and make the system vulnerable to any other thing that they can now do. Okay, so they try to ensure that the storage is filled up with the replicating and replicating. And before you know, file gone missing, new files suddenly appear in another indication. That means that a worm is present. Okay, are we taking note of that? Spyware. So it's a malicious software that is designed to collect information about a user activity without their knowledge. So they spy on that computer. And what are the things they do? They record keystrokes on your keyboard activities. They get information. They monitor your web browsing habits and activities. They collect username and password and credit card informations. It does not replicate like worms or viruses, but it's just there to spy on that computer. The only real indication that the user might notice, and it's right there in the slide, there is a spy on the computer, is a reduction in processing power and bandwidth. Because you're wondering, why is this computer, why am I using this so much bandwidth? I'm just doing a few things. And if you carry out an anti-spyware, you now know that you're being spied upon. And these are used by spyware to communicate information back to the what? Hacker. What's an hardware? It's a malicious software designed to generate income for the originator by displaying adverts. That's what the hardware does. It's just to generate ads. So normally downloaded with free software without users' knowledge. So you try to download the software, and those free softwares, most time, there's a lot of ads, and you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful with all those free softwares, right? It can track internet sites, visits to match target advertisement, display unrequested advertisement in the browser, right? And generally, it's considered more of a nuisance, right? More of a nuisance than dangerous, right? Although there have been tendency in recent times for the hardware to be linked to spyware. So those hardware can be function. When you let them in, they can spy on you, right? Symptoms can be unnoticeable, but some types of hardware can slow down the performance because it keeps popping up, right? Can slow down the performance of a computer, right? And then tends to be a larger number than usual of what? Pop-ups. So take note of that. So when we talk about the rootkit, the rootkit is a type of malicious software that is designed to install a set of tools in a computer that allows the attacker to have remote access to that computer continuously. It gives that attacker continuous privilege access to a computer and hides its presence deep within the operating system. Now take note of it. It is root. And that user is completely unaware that their system or that computer has been infected. The different tools enable the attacker to discover the user's password and credit card details. The root in the rootkit, take note of that, the root in the rootkit is taken from the word used in the Unix and Linux systems to signify administrative what? Administrator account. Okay? Or somebody who has what? Administrative privilege. Right? So it can be downloaded in a similar way to phishing by clicking on a link within an email, or a hacker could gain administrator privilege and install it remotely. The rootkit can now change any security software, such as antivirus, to convince it that it is not there. It is also capable of removing the antivirus because once somebody gain access to your system, they can be able to do anything they want to do, gain access to information that you probably did not know without your notice, and they can carry out that damage. So it's very important to be vigilant, right? Malicious boot, or boot for short. This malicious boot is seen as internet robot. Now, as the name suggests, it performs tasks that are normally undertaken by a human. when used to gather what? Information over the internet. Both are referred to as web crawlers. Without them, the smooth running of search engine, for example, will not be as efficient. Unfortunately, there are many malicious bots, like a worm. They can replicate itself and is designed to feed back to a server. And that server is called a botnet because it is in control of a network of infected computer. The botnet can now gather email address and from there generate spam to those and other addresses. They are capable of gathering information from different websites. If you look at it, okay, those information could be your date of birth, insurance, address, and they are very extremely difficult to detect. Why are they extremely difficult to detect? Because of the increased use of IoT. This IoT means Internet of Things. Your watch, your smart TV, your bike, everything is just connected. So this is largely because some of these devices in the IoT are relatively easy to hack. What is it to hack? Your smart TVs. And because of that, they can now use that network that they hack into to get information on your devices. Okay. Ransomware. What's a ransomware? Now, from the word ransom, you should not be surprised, right? Right? So it's a type of malware that block access to the user data until a ransom is paid. So an alternative approach is for the hacker to threaten to publish the user's data unless a ransom is paid. One of the most common way of downloading ransomware is again phishing emails. Once you click on the link, it appears to be a link from a trusted file. And once you open the software, this can take a form of a worm or a Trojan horse, and it will control the user's computer. Among these many actions the software can perform once it's taken over your computer is to encrypt your files and will demand payment before you can decrypt it back. Now, I have a problem with this. Now, and I pray you're not a victim of ransomware, because once they have access to it, they can get a copy, and every time they would always demand payment. That is why the European government, the UK government, we say no to terrorism. You don't compromise with them. You don't negotiate with them, because they would always come back for more. It's human nature. There are other types of malware. For example, the fileless malware is a type of malware, right? So I've talked about this one. The ransomware does the encryption, and then the fileless malware is the RAM based. Okay, so take note of that. So it's a type of malware that does not rely on files and leaves no evidence once it has been executed. It is very difficult for anti-malware software to detect and remove. It only resides in the main memory, which is your RAM. So fileless malware does not perform any action which affects your computer hard drive. It ceases to work once the system is rebooted. Right? It resides only in your RAM and then regarding information. Then we have this scareware. The scareware. Now, what does the scareware do? It's a type of malware that tricks the computer user into thinking that their computer has been infected with a virus. It appears as a pop-up and seems to come from a genuine antivirus provider. The user pays the provider to download the antivirus and then discover it's too late. I've been scammed. What? Yes, you've been scammed. So if you pay for antiviruses, pay from the genuine website. Don't just pay because they tell you a antivirus saying your computer is infected. Pay to. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Okay. So this one is encryption. This one is encryption. This one you size the fileless malware resides in the RAM, and the scareware is what is deception. There are numbers of ways that malware can be used to carry out illegal activities, right? So let's look at it in the next slide. We have computer fraud. What's computer fraud? It involves using a computer to take or alter electronic data or to gain unlawful, take note of the word, unlawful use of a computer system to illegally benefit financially. You are taking hold of somebody's computer to benefit illegally financially. There are several types of malware, and general misuse of personal data have been described. For example, spyware collects a user personal data, browsing habits, keystroke, right? This can lead to what? Credit card fraud, as well as identity theft. So most people on those that's why you have to be careful on the internet. Be careful because most of them could be identity theft. People asking you for money on the internet. Don't do that. If your relative is asking money on social media, call them. Why are you asking me for money? Call them to be sure. To be sure that is who they are. It could be somebody pretending to be them. So be very careful. Be very careful. So once a fraudster has gained a user personal and financial data, they can either sell the information to other criminals or they can impersonate the user. They can use the user's financial data to ask the bank for a new PIN or even an extra card. And you are not aware you have an extra card, you're using it to be paying for things. And you wonder why your money keeps going, not knowing that you have gained access to it. They can use it to buy goods via the internet using the credit card they have obtained. They can withdraw large sum of money from the user's bank account. Most credit card fraud victims are unaware of what has happened until it is too late. So please don't be a victim of this. We've seen issues of scareware, right? How they disguise to scam users. We've seen phishing, vishing, smishing, farming. They are intended to get users to divulge their password, credit cards, and bank account information so that what? The fraudsters can access the user's account to withdraw money, make money transfers, or even use it to shop over the internet. Right? So take note of this. We've even seen ransomware. As we've seen, they blackmail people into paying before they get their files. So please take note of that. The next one we'll look at is industrial espionage. Now, one dictionary definition of an industrial espionage is spying directly towards discovering the secrets of a rival manufacturer. It's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. They are fighting over each other, getting secrets from each other, being the first one to launch something that the other company have been working so hard to get. It is usually the theft of a business trade secret. That's industrial espionage. Spying towards discovering a secret. So it has become a major tool in industrial what? So malware has now become what? A major tool. Now, before malware, what do they do? Before malware, what did they do? They used to, it is being carried out by, they get employees to work for the rival company. You've watched all this movie when other agencies are spying on other agencies and they spy from the inside. And it is now more often carried out by hacking into the database or even computer network. So what do they use now? They use malware. It has now become a major tool in industrial cyber espionage. and they are just stealing company secret, confidential information. And it is rapidly increasing. Rapidly increasing. So you have to be very careful. So when a company employee goes to a website or open an email, there is a great risk of downloading malware in one form or the other. So they try to create software that becomes something they are addicted to, so they can easily download, and then they can harm that system, harm the organization. So malware can be used to access an employee's computer and the company information it holds, regardless of what type of malware is being used. So they are being specific on who they want to attack. Each one attempt is to exploit weaknesses in the software to gain access. So the attack is designed to target a specific computer, which does itself leads to what? Industrial what? Espionage. When a particular company is being spied on, malware which is produced is to what? To attack, right? Any computer with vulnerabilities to get information from unnecessary sources. Okay, so it includes foreign state secrets, right? It could be criminals, foreign states going to hack another state. It could be criminals. It could be a group of hackers with a common goal to get that information from that organization, as well as terrorists. Foreign states are usually best placed to conduct the most damaging cyber espionage and computer network attacks. So the cyber espionage can be conducted in order to hack into a specific business computer network to steal large amount of data. Right? It could be intellectual properties, projects, research, or an acquisition plan. In the past, what did they do? They employ spies. But now, everything is now cyber. It's my computer stealing. And you know the funny thing about this? If you go on the internet and you search about this, you will discover that these intellectual properties that is being stolen, even in the US, in the UK, it costs hundreds of millions of pounds per year of the damage. They hack into companies' account, steal secrets and everything, and they'll have to pay for. The company will now be the one to pay. Certain countries have been held responsible for these activities, but more private companies are now getting involved in this type of espionage. Group of hackers are even offering their services for hire for millions of pounds. Some are actually hacking into company secrets and offering the information they have gathered to the highest bidder. So they go to dark web and collect Bitcoin, which is untraceable. So it is imperative for large corporations to have their own counter-espionage operative to make their IT system secured. They need to investigate which of their secrets has already been offered at auction. So let's take note of that. Computer sabotage. What is computer sabotage? This is the deliberate attack intended to cause computers on network to cease to function properly, disrupting normal operation. The idea is that the business, education establishment, or other organizations are attacked in order that their normal operations are disrupted. It has been estimated that billions of dollars in the US alone have been spent on legal fees so that damage could be paid out to victims of sabotage involving identity theft. Because when they attack these hospitals, financial institutions, What is going to happen? The companies will be the one to pay those money to those victims. A great deal of money has even been spent on repairing computer systems in hospitals and banks. Computer sabotage within organizations is often carried out by disgruntled employees who is intent on what causing harm to the organization just because the way they didn't like the way they were sacked. Now I want to say this: if you don't like the way, it's not your company. Are you getting me? People might decide how they want to keep you or let you go. If you don't like it, move on. I mean, if they don't want you, it's their loss. You don't have to hold it against them after everything you've done. Well, you've learned, go do better. Start your own business if you want to do that. Yeah. Because working for someone can only limit your impact, especially when they don't give you the opportunity to grow. So that does not mean you have to now find a way to ensure that the company does not grow. No, that is wrong. That is wrong. So employees might make unauthorized attempt to view, disclose, retrieve, delete, or change information by misusing the system privileges they have been granted. Some acts of sabotage are committed by former employees, perhaps unhappy with the way they lost their job. And most of them are carried out remotely. So please let's be careful. Even when it is in your power to do so, don't do it. Don't do it. It is clear to see that not all sabotage is a result of sending malware, but it can consist of a virus being sent to a computer which prevents users from logging on. It can take forms of distributing malware to allow hackers to illegally access the organization network. So you have to guide against these things. Protect all the hardwares and softwares. This will not only require a firewall and use of antivirus, but would include guidelines about the use of separate user IDs and password for each individual user of a computer, including advice to change it regularly. So please change it regularly. It will help you, right? It will help you. Okay. What are the consequences for organizations and individuals? So we'll look at the consequences. For organizations, malware poses a major threat to any organization. It can ruin the organization's security arrangement regarding its computer network and system. It can disturb its business operation, leading to financial losses. That is expenses incurred for cleaning infected systems, hiring external expert because, again, the ITs alone may not have the expertise to cope with such a massive undertaking. So outsiders may need to what? To be brought in. Potential compensation for data breach. You have to look at that. You also have to look at the data theft, data identity theft. Unauthorized users to personal computer can lead to a large-scale identity theft and fraud. An employee will just click on a link in an email, and that can release a virus that could delete all the computer data stored on the hard drive within the organization and would even enter their network. So if a virus has affected one computer on the network, each computer has to be disconnected from the network, cleaned by. So you don't just you disconnect everything, okay, before you connect them. So if you are cleaning while it's still connected, it leads to further infection. So you have to disconnect everything, which is going to take a lot of time to do that. Right? It can commit identity theft, right? Which can gain valuable information like banking details, date of birth, email address, password. We've also seen for scarware can be used as a tool to fool users into paying non-existent antivirus softwares. Okay? For individuals too, financial loss. We've said it here. Your system can be slowed down. Okay? So that is that. All right. Finally, we look at prevention of malware. So antivirus softwares must ensure that all data is scanned for malicious code as it enters into the company's network. So you have to scan them. There must be a firewall which filters what? Incoming traffic and prevents malicious software entering the system. There should be what? An antivirus. With the antivirus must what? Be kept up to date. Okay. And then scan schedules to run at frequent interval. Only one antivirus should be installed to avoid any conflict. Okay. Anti-spyware. There are some anti-malware that's also antiviruses as well, right? So you don't need to have more than one. You need to have anti-spyware, right? To ensure that your system is not being spied upon. Okay. So the anti-malware softwares can protect network computers in two ways. How do they protect it in two ways? Again, it can guard against the entry of malware into a computer, into a network, and it can remove malware that has been managed to get into what? A computer system. So it's doing two things: guard against the entry of malware into a network, and it can now remove any malware that has managed to penetrate into the computer network system. So this is very important. Now, lastly, before we close, companies are advised to develop and implement anti-malware policies and ensure they are consistently applied across organizations. A record should be kept of any known malicious website, which should then be blocked by the firewall from accessing the network. There should be a dedicated standalone virus checking the computer, which are equipped with antivirus softwares. All employees should be educated, very important, should be educated so that they understand the risk for malware and are aware of the day-to-day procedures they have to follow to help prevent malware infection. They should be encouraged to stop and think before clicking. Don't just click on a link. Think, this link, what is it all about? Make research on it. Or if possible, they should inform the IT department. If you click on it, inform the IT department as soon as possible. They should know that they must not connect any removable media or personally owned device to the network. They need to be aware that they must report any strange or unexpected system behavior to a technician or a member of the IT department. This is good advice to both organizations and individuals. Is that the operating system and browser software should be kept up to date. This is very important. Software that is no longer used or old versions of application software must be removed. Don't keep them, remove them. If a software is no longer supported by the software company, then it is open to malware attacks. Emails should be read with suspicion, since encouraging the user to download malware only works if the user is not paying sufficient attention to who sent the email and what it might be suggesting. In phishing, there are things to look out for that we describe in details. So what do we see? The sender's address, yes, the spelling or grammar errors, the true address of the links that is embedded, and so on. Strong password should be used. That is one, right? Password that is unique. And please always change them. Websites that you are visiting for farming should have an appropriate padlock next to the URL. Users should always log off from their computers at the end of every session. Please. Remember, a comprehensive approach combining software solution, security policy, and user awareness is essential for effective malware prevention. Thank you very much, and hope you have been able to learn. We have talked a lot of things from personal data, from security policies to malware and threats. If you have any question, please let me know in the comment section so we can attend to them. And I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to share the YouTube channel to your friends. Don't forget to like, share. And if you have any issues with any private tutoring on any subject, whether it's IGCSE or E-level, we're here for you. We're a registered organization in England, United Kingdom, for your benefit. We have podcasts on educations, on boosting your reading habit, your study habit. All this and all this is right here in the Geotech YouTube channel. So make use of them, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.